Welcome to Real Estate Done Rightish, your favorite podcast for realtors by realtors. I'm Jen.
And I'm Annalie, and for a combined 30 years, we've been working in this industry just trying to figure it out. And by figuring it out,
we mean that we've perfected our let me think about that phase, which is really just us mentally calculating if we can afford that vacation if this deal falls through.
No.
Have you
That's
ever
horrible.
I feel like people have been there a time or two, you know? Like an expensive vacation and people living still paycheck to paycheck, you know?
Yeah.
We're trying to get out. We're trying to get us all out of that scenario.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Okay.
What? Okay, what? What's next?
You're supposed to talk.
Oh, yeah. All right, everybody, you know what time it is. It's time to smash the follow button. Do us a favor if you like this podcast, if you even remotely like it, maybe even if you don't like it so much, but you just kind of like us, smash it.
Smash the follow button, you know. And leave us a review.
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right. Today, what are we talking about?
We're talking about, so this is part 2 in our series on the listing appointment, and we started with everything you do, sort of the pre-qual, pre-setting up. You can look at what that episode is. Today is still pre-appointment. It's prepping the data. So we're zeroing in specifically and looking at how do you look at a market evaluation? What data are you pulling? It's really the prep side on our end, not the actual listing appointment and the presentation of the data.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so...
You know what I'm trying to avoid saying, Annalie?
What?
Let's dive in. Because I feel like every podcast host says that, and I say that, and I don't like it.
I don't think I've ever said that in my life.
All right, let's just dive right in.
Let's get right.
It's like a very podcast hosting thing.
Let's get to it, folks. All right. Well, should I go first, or do you want to go first?
No,
we do this a little differently. So
we do it differently, but I will just say that Annalie, I feel like you are... So Annalie, if you guys don't know, Annalie, let me tell you about her. She has... So we've done a couple of presentations in our office on mock listing appointments. And yours has been like legitimately, I'm not just talking you up, legitimately one of the most, when I was managing the office, that was like the most requested. Where's that video of Annalie? We ended up putting it on YouTube, and I think when I moved out of my position, it got taken down, sadly. Mm-hmm. And so then we did another one when I was general manager, and I don't know if it still exists in existence. It is. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so people love it. Again, this is just the prep side, but I think the upcoming episodes that we do are going to be a bit more of a mock listing appointment. So we'll break down kind of the behind the scenes and why you do what you do. But from here forward, I think we should do Annalie's listing appointment. Well, I'll throw in some like, this is how I do it. Also, like it'll be fun for people to hear how you hold the conversations. I learn something new every time. I'm excited. Okay, so how do you prep the data, and what do you do? You're doing a market analysis for a home. What's your first?
Yeah. Well, first, I always make sure monthly I pull a macroeconomic look at the market. Mm-hmm. And so what that looks like is because data points have been compressed over the last, 8 years, so much. And what I mean by that is there's fewer things happening, right? Why are you looking at me like that?
We're going to have to do the outtake at the end of this that's making me giggle right now.
What is it?
The boobies one.
Oh.
I just heard your little song in my head coming in. You sing-songing about it. Okay. Anyways, the outtakes will be at the very end, guys, if you want to hear what that whole thing is about. Okay. I'm sorry for the giggling. It just happens sometimes. Okay, so
I start with a macro look at the market. And macro look right now in my area, so I work the entire Twin Cities market. Macro would be I think it's a 13 county metro, which isn't the metro. It's a huge part of Minnesota, but it's a 13 county area. I used to do 7 counties, but because we have less data points, less homes coming to market, less homes selling, what I'm looking for with my macro look or at the economy, my macroeconomic look, is I want trend lines, right? And I want smooth trend lines. And so I don't want a small data pool, because the smaller the data pool, the more volatility there's going to be in those trend lines. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let's give a specific example. What is a component of data that you're pulling to look at the trend line?
Yeah. So it's days on market.
Okay, let's just talk about days on market.
Yeah.
So when you look at days on market, how far back do you pull the history?
I do a 3-year look.
Okay, a 3-year look. And you're looking, what's the average days on market per home sold? And so if you do a 6-month look,
Well, I should say I'm looking at this month
Yep.
or last month. It's always the last. It's, you can only look at any set of data at a moment. It changes every day. So I look the end of every month, like a closed out month. So right now we're in April, for example. I'm looking at through the end of March. Okay, so I'm looking at that. What was the days on market in March, average days on market, and then versus last year, March. Okay, now.
So by trend, and I'm really breaking it down because I do think that there are people that aren't data heads and they're not economic gurus like you. So, I've heard people go, what do you mean by trend lined? So like as an example, you could look at every March for the last 15 years and see the average days on market, and you're going to see a trend. You could compare that to every December for the last 12 years and see a trend there. Well, March days on market are lower than December days on market in general. So trend line is what is the trend over time? And you know, as a data expert, you can unfortunately manipulate what data you're pulling and how you're looking at it to tell a story that you wanted to tell. We don't want to do that.
Right.
We want to bring the data in a way that feels true to what's happening in the market, not in favor of what we're trying to look for. Like, as an example, if somebody's like, I'm thinking of selling in December, do you think it's a good time to sell? What's the question they're really asking? Is it better than March? Well, in December, days on market is this number. It's a great time to sell. That's not a whole picture.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So we're looking for trends.
Yeah. So I'm just looking for kind of smooth trend lines, because I want to know not just what happened this March versus last March, what happened this January, February leading up to March, right? Which direction are we trending? And is there anything that's is it behaving the same as last year or differently? If we start to be off trend from last year, and last year was a normal quote unquote year, and what I mean by normal is we had normal economic stressors. We had normal, again, these are all in quotation marks, seasonality, right? We have a seasonality in Minnesota. So
are you telling me this year isn't normal?
I'm telling you, if you look at last fall,
I'm kidding. That was
it was not normal.
Joke.
Yeah. Well, last fall, and I'm looking again at a huge set of data.
Yeah.
It goes like average sales price goes up and down every year with some, and then it keeps rising because we've got an appreciation situation, right? So, but there's a peak and there's a valley every year because of seasonality in Minnesota specifically. Last year, in about August, all of the smooth trend line went out the window for average sales price, and it's up, down, up, down, up, down from August, September, October through the end of the year.
Why
and
do you
into
think that is?
the election.
Yeah.
Right. So there were a lot of people pausing, starting, and that just created craziness. And there it was like, well, and so I can show that to people, and I can say, here's literally a representation of what happened to seasonality last year. Well, it was chaos. Okay. Can we expect that this year should have a more normal curve like 2023 did? Yeah, we should be able to expect a little more normalcy. Now we've got economic things that are causing all kinds of turbulence right now. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out on a macro level. How turbulent is it really in the housing market? We've got other markets that are turbulent, but so I'm pulling that data set. That's going to be like a whole episode probably just about that data set, but I'm always coming in. So I'm making sure that my macro look at the market is updated and ready to go. And that's printed. I printed on like heavy cardstock because I'm going to write all over that thing. I'm going to tell a story about what's happening in the general market. I'm going to flip it over and draw things on the back. So that's on like cardstock. Good.
Yeah, that's great.
And I can share a little bit. That has days on market, percent of list price received at sale. So is it getting more or less than list price on average? month supply, average and median sales price, so we can watch appreciation. And there's a couple other things on there, but that's like the top.
That's the macro
the
look.
top stuff. That's the macro look.
Okay.
I'm a little bit of a weirdo. I don't prep a ton. I bring one other piece of paper. I don't prep a big CMA, quote unquote. I bring one line item look, and it's what I call the appraisal range for the house. So I'm looking at, through an appraiser's eyes, if I need to go and justify a purchase price on this property, what data is that person looking at? What is that appraiser going to look for? And that's the data that I'm pulling. So this would be pendings and solds.
Within the last 6 months.
In the last 6 months, it's as far as I want to go back. If there's no data, I will go back further because an appraiser will go back further.
Right.
In a highly densely populated area, it would be within a half a mile. I usually, if you look at a map, you can kind of see things that make sense, right? Major freeways as kind of stopping points, waterways, parkways, you want to kind of just choose an area that makes sense. You don't want to hop into different developments. I just had a property that was in one development and literally across the street was one of the most expensive developments in Minnesota. So I didn't want to take anything from there. I wanted to keep it within just the development. So really knowing your property and what those boundaries that make sense look like. And then size, similarly sized properties. So what does that mean? The bigger the property, the wider I go for range. So if I'm looking at 1,000 square foot property, I know that 1,350, 1,400 square foot properties are going to be completely different than 1,000 square foot home. And so I'm going to maybe look at 1,250 or 1,300 and less, and anything less. If I'm looking at a 4,500 square foot property, I'm probably looking from 4,000 to 5,000 square feet. So I'll widen that range. Condition amenities is the final thing an appraiser will look at. I don't really care about that in this viewpoint.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to compete with these properties, so I'm not too worried about it. Now, I will quickly look through and just gauge, okay, is there a point where sometimes the data just flips a number to you? Meaning, I know based on the data, all of a sudden, I don't discriminate on beds and baths in this poll either. I leave it. I just go square footage. So if I've got a 3-bed, 2-bath, and based on the square footage, all of a sudden, all the homes at the top of the price point are all 4-bed, 3-baths, because maybe I'm a big 3-2. I'm probably not going to compete as well with those. So that might be a natural line that I'm drawing. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Of okay, that's kind of the top end.
If you're pulling them in your local MLS or whatever it is, you'll just literally see a list of it. You'll see a list of the homes that you're pulling, and you can start to see kind of a demarcation point where there's
and that's what I'm looking for.
There's a clear line here.
Yep. Now, if there isn't a clear line, because I've had properties where it's all over the place, it's big, small. Some of that's based on year built. Right. So I'm looking for, is there a reason why these numbers look the way they do, just based on data? And then if there still isn't, if it is just all over the place, wonky, if it's just no rhyme or reason, then I'll look at photos. And I'm wanting, 10 to 12 properties is great for this view. You don't need 50. You don't want too many. And what I'm looking for with this number is if a top number. So if we get above this, let's say somebody wanted to write a purchase agreement at, let's say that the very top number on the whole list is 550, but the top 3 are all at the very tippy top of that size range that I used, and they've got extra bathrooms, right? Bathrooms cost money to add. And so I might pull it down. So what was below that? What's the top number where I feel like if we go above it, we may not appraise. We might run into appraisal issues. And so that's what I'm pulling. And I'm just printing a 1-line sheet with those data points on it. Now, again, if it's a wonky situation and there isn't that demarcation point that just makes sense, then I'll go to photos and I'll say, wow, this one was huge, and then this one is tiny, and then this one, what's going on? Well, maybe the tiny one was ridiculously upgraded and on a larger lot, or there was something. And maybe the giant one was an estate and it was full of stuff and they just were selling it and one wanted somebody to take over it. So were there weird outliers or things that I need to be aware of that photos will help with? So that is what I'm printing. It's a 1 page. That is the only thing I print
It's pretty amazing.
and bring.
Yeah.
Now everything else I'm doing live.
Yeah.
I now use my computer in front of me, and they have my iPad, which mirrors my computer. So they're watching what I'm watching, and I'm explaining to them what I'm looking at, and then I can kind of point as well. But now we're not all hovering around my computer and feeling awkward. They're getting their own screen, and they're watching what I do, and then I'm pulling active competition with them. So I'm going through the macro of the market, the appraisal range, and then if we were going to, let's play the game. If we were going to market today, I'm looking in probably not just your neighborhood, probably your entire city, or, in Minneapolis proper, we've got bigger neighborhoods. I might be looking at multiple of them. If I'm a buyer and I know I'm not going above that top appraisal number, I'm shopping, and maybe we push it 25 or 50,000 over that. And I want to be in this area. Now, I'm not discriminating beds, baths, size, anything. I'm just saying
buyers are shopping this way. So we're looking at how a buyer is shopping.
Well, and not necessarily. I'm just saying if I have a budget, some buyers have, garage limitations or bed bath limitations, but I just want to see what is everything I would be competing against in this area if I know my top appraisal number is 550, right? So I'm looking at everything. And now I might, if it's a big enough number, I'll probably put a bottom on there as well. So like I have $1 million listing coming up. I'm not looking at the $300,000 homes in their entire suburb because there are some. I'm looking at 800 to like 1.1 of active competition, and I'm watching that list. And so then we look at that, and then we put our buyer hats on, and then we look at photos, and we say, if I'm a buyer today, where in this list do we fit? Do we make sense? Are we competitive? And then we can talk strategy surrounding that price. Oftentimes we're picking a range at the first meeting of like, if you sold today, you would be comfortably within this range. That's going to change based on seasonality, mostly in Minnesota. And so then we look at that nice data line as well. I pull that up for them and show them, if you're trying to time the market, look at what data shows us. On average, the last 3 years, the top number for average sales price, and this is a big macro look, not for their neighborhood, happened in July or August. So that's when they closed. When did they list?
Yep.
April, May, June, maybe.
Yeah.
And so we look at that, and then we talk about, and then they can make decisions about strategy on timing if they want to. They can make decisions on, if they're buying or if they're not buying or where they're going, and all of those things. So I pre-look at that active competition, but I don't print it out. I don't care because honestly, if I'm meeting with you on Thursday, next Monday, that's bad data.
Right.
A bunch of them sold. There's new things that come to market. So I don't care too much about those until we're actually coming to market.
Yeah.
I also, for people that are on like a longer runway or a shorter runway, doesn't matter. If they would like, I start emailing them that active competition list, either weekly or monthly, depending on how far out they are. So then now they're empowered to start watching that, and they can see if all of a sudden, is everything selling every weekend? If I send it, if we look at it at our listing appointment and there's 9 homes on it, and then I send it, and after 3 weeks, it's built up to 29 homes. Ooh, right?
Yeah,
That's a different market. If there's nothing on the market, I've had that happen in the last 5 years. There's literally not one home on the market in their price range. You might want to go. If you're ready to go, let's go. So they start watching that. And then if I see something interesting, I also get it emailed to me. Then that's a reason for me to touch base with them moving forward.
Great.
That's kind of all the data I do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot, but I don't.
Well, and you've done this for 20 some years. And so I feel like that it's important for us to kind of asterisk that for somebody that is maybe newer. And I'll share a little bit about what I do because I feel like your brain is really systematic too. It's just interesting to hear the way different people do things. You are so in tune with the market and you do this enough and you're watching it so much that it seems that you can go into the appointment and be intuitive with the data. You're confident in how to look at the data, how to navigate the MLS. Like it seems like basic things, but if somebody's like a little clunky in the MLS, you're not going to want to be trying to pull that up on the fly and be like, how do I get in here again? And where did I save that search? And all of that stuff. So you've got it down and it makes a lot of sense the way you do it. And I like because you've done that with me. and I do a version of this that's on paper, but it brings the client into the conversation in a different way than just like, here's the data, I'm showing you the information, you're flipping through pages really quick. It's like, hey, let's take a look at this together. It becomes conversational, and it helps with the buy-in piece of how we price the home, the strategy in the pricing, the strategy in the prep, the looking at the competition. It helps them see what you're seeing rather than you telling them this is what your house is worth. It becomes a collaborative process in that way.
Yeah, I also like it because I want them to know that I'm not handpicking anything.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
cherry
yeah.
picking listings to make it their home valued higher or lower. I'm showing them
showing you the
every
real
single
data.
thing, and
Yeah.
this is live, and this is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And I explained to them why I don't print it out.
Yeah.
It's because it's bad so fast that it's
Yeah.
really not worth the paper
Yeah.
it's printed on. Now, I will email that link to them, and I will keep updating them with the new data, but leaving them with a big stack of comps or active competition is worthless.
Yeah.
It's just not, everything's
Yeah.
moving so fast that it's just not going to be good.
Yeah.
2 weeks when they're ready to go to market,
that's so good.
it's already bad data.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. I'm going to do like a really quick, like, here's what I pull. So I literally have a list because I found that when I was going on a lot of cold listing appointments, I was going on many per week, and it was a lot to like do and work with buyers at the same time. So I eventually and at the time there were more listings to sell, I eventually systematized like exactly what I was pulling and then had my assistant helping me with that. So like, here's the packet of what to pull. And I did print more out. For whatever reason, a lot of this could be done electronically, and I feel like I will switch to doing the comps the way that you're doing it. But so I'm
going to add bringing some of this with
me. Cool. Look
because
at us.
I think it's kind of a fun. I can almost see it being like a little bit of a game with some of this information. And kind of fun.
This is good. Yeah. So I have just a cover sheet. Like I've created like a book, a data market analysis book. And so I've got a cover sheet that's branded with my stuff. I go to the Minneapolis Association of Realtors, and then I pull the Twin Cities stats monthly. So like, and that shows like year over year data and month over month data. So it just gives a quick snapshot. And I start, well, we won't go into how you explain it, but so that's just an easy, quick pull. It already looks pretty. It's something that people are like, oh, this is interesting. It's not super in-depth. I don't spend a lot of time on it, but it leaves them with something to see. Then I go into their specific city, and I'll compare that to what's happening in the greater metro area. So starting to kind of in the zoom in process. We have a thing called InfoSparks, which allows us to pull the trend lines that you were looking at. So then I pull charts with the max amount of time that you can pull, which I don't remember how many years it is. It's like 10 or something.
It's 5.
Oh, is it only 5?
I think so. Huh. Maybe.
For some
Maybe
reason
it's
I'm thinking
longer.
it's more than that. But I'll pull a chart that has the Twin Cities with a max number of years, and then I'll have the median sales price on that. And then I'll also have their city on that same chart, so they can see exactly how their city stacks up. And now, depending on what city you're in, the neighborhood becomes really specific too. So if it's relevant, like if we're in Minneapolis proper, then I'll also pull the neighborhood statistics so people can see that. I pull a quick CMA, so like it's a feature in the MLS that allows you to pull like a spreadsheet basically. So it's called a quick CMA of everything in the city that's active and then also sold within the last 6 months. And then it has a summary at the end. So you can see like what's the average price per square foot, average square footage, average price. Like it's just to me, it's another interesting look at the data that allows them to see the overall. Then I do a quick CMA of everything within a mile. And again, depending on where their home is, what is the relevant, it's the same kind of, it's the appraisal information potentially that you might be pulling. So it's a chart, and usually it's several pages, and then I stick that in there. And the part of the reason I do that is because then people can look at what's sold, because a lot of them are like, yeah, Nancy sold a year ago down the street. What's the square footage? And I've been caught in appointments where I'm like, I don't freaking know.
Yeah.
But then I can look at that and go, oh, this is everything that's sold within the last year within a mile of your home.
Yeah.
So now if you, and I'll say, I'm not going to take time and go through all of this, but if you want to look at this, you can look at it. And people are like, oh, cool. And they'll like start looking through that. So leave that with them. And then what I've been doing is pulling the morning of the listing appointment, sometimes the night before, depending on what my schedule looks like, what I see as the most relevant comps. And I really do appreciate your I'm not handpicking, because you feel that when you're in there, like, how do I pick what I can't print out 1,000 pages of pictures. So I tried to pull a range of relevant comps within, I'm looking at square footage, bed, bath, but not discriminate completely on that, thinking about how a buyer is going to show up, what they might be looking at. And again, and we'll go into this in the listing appointment, my objective is not to find a price to list the house at. My objective is to give them a picture and for me to see a picture of what's happening that's relevant in their local market, and then to look at it and go, it's kind of the same thing that you would do, but I've done it on paper. But look at it and go, okay, let's look at this together. How does this home compare to your home? Oh, that one has another bath. That bath looks so updated. It's surprising how deep people will look into that. So giving them an opportunity to look at it. And then I make notes at the top of it that are like, let's take a look at the days on market and if there were seller contributions or specific things like that, because people will often just look at the price sold but not be factoring in all of the other, or and then what did they list it at and what did they sell it at, depending on what the market is. So that list is something that anybody else could pull for me, and minus the looking at comps. Now I'm like, if I'm just like doing this differently, I would take out the relevant comps and just pull that in the appointment like you do, and then everything else potentially print and create a packet and be good to go with that. Okay?
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff.
I know it is. But so when I first got into the industry, I was doing this with my sister, and she's such a data head, and she's much more than I'm, like somewhat of a blend, and found that like that satiated the engineers.
Yeah.
It was like, but you do that in the appointment. Yeah. But this to me was like, it also, again, gave me confidence that if I couldn't remember a piece of data or I needed something to lean on, at least I had this stuff to lean on. And kind of and I think you've said this too, I would rather err on the side of overwhelming people with information and leaving them with more than not.
Yeah.
And so, it is a lot. Yeah. But I don't spend a ton of time on that. I'm like, I just kind of go over it quickly. Yeah.
Let them know it's in there if they want to look at it further than they can.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
That's it for what to prep. Anything else for you on what to prep?
Not from the data standpoint. No.
Okay. So in the next episodes, we'll talk about anything else that we're prepping before we go to the appointment, and then we'll start moving into what we actually say and do in the appointment.
Yeah. Okay. Love it.
That's it for this episode of Real Estate Done Right-ish.
As always, if you're finding value in these conversations, please follow us, leave us a review. Like we said, if you like us or not, it makes a big difference. Pretend just for the 1 minute.
You can pretend.
That would be great. Until next time.
Cheers to doing it right-ish.
We'll try. I'll just do it as fast as it feels okay. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general knowledge and informational purposes only and do not constitute professional, legal, or financial advice. As licensed real estate agents in the state of Minnesota, we are not attorneys, financial advisors, or tax professionals, and we cannot provide advice in those areas or in regards to any agency or broker-specific topics in any other state. Any reliance you place on the information provided in this podcast is strictly at your own risk. We strongly encourage you to consult with qualified professionals for specific guidance related to your individual circumstances.
Wow! That was good. All right. Holy sh! Not so much covering my full body so that when I do the thumbnails, it's not just computer from here up.
Oh, yeah.
So I need the thumbnail from that's
you
why.
Want your boobies to show?
Always. I always want my boobies showing. Oh my God. Okay, wait, I gotta find my one thing here that do you have a conversational
those
thing?
Boobies. Put your boobies on display.
Okay. Ready? Are you ready, Annalie?
Yeah.
Augusta. Nino.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to Real Estate Done Right-ish. Do you always get surprised by me?
I didn't know you were going right now.
I'm going now again.
Okay.
Ready? Welcome to Real Estate Done Right-ish, your favorite podcast for realtors by realtors. We're realtors. And I'm Jen.
And I'm Annalie. And for a combined 30 years, we've been working in this industry just trying to figure it out. And by figuring it out,
Our phones face, fucking, let's start from the beginning again.
Jen,
I know, right?
you really fucked that one up.
Wait, now I lost my thingamajobber.